Welcome everyone to this impromptu episode of The Drawing Board. My name is David Franklin. I am your host. Now I know for the month of October I was planning on doing all Halloween themed episodes, but today I sort of ran into a little of a bump. I went to the movies and saw The Martian, which is a movie about Matt Damon is playing an astronaut who is doing some research on Mars, and oh my gosh, my light just got blown over. Oh my gosh. So he's playing an astronaut who gets left behind on Mars and he has to do all these different things to survive, and it was absolutely fantastic. It's a rush of science nostalgia, of American patriotism, of international hopefulness that great superpowers like America and China can work together. It was an absolutely fantastic movie, and because of that I was inspired to do an impromptu video talking about the science of it. So literally, I just got done watching it like 2 hours ago. I'm just gonna be sitting here literally reading my notes off of my phone about the different points I wanted to talk about. So the very first point I want to talk about is at the very beginning of the movie. Spoiler alert, if you haven't seen The Martian, go see it and come back and watch this, because it's a great movie and I don't want to ruin any of the things that happen in the movie by telling you about it right now. So when they're about to be taking off in their space shuttle to leave, five astronauts, or 5 or 6 of them, leave Matt Damon behind because during a space storm, a piece of debris flies by and hits him. It's a satellite, and a piece of that satellite sticks into his suit. Well, it damages part of his suit, and the commander gets a signal that his life support system is down, that he is dead. Well, what happened was a part of it was damaged, and yes, his suit was compromised. However, the piece that impaled him stayed in, and there was a blood clot that came out and stopped it. So the question is, it stopped his own bleeding and stopped the suit from decompressing. So the question is, right off the bat, can blood and an object that impaled you work as a viable way to decompress or to keep decompression from happening on your suit? Mars has an atmospheric pressure of about 0.047 pounds per square inch, whereas here on Earth we have about 14.7. It's this really big gap. So because of that, we had to wear pressurized suits in order to trying to, how should I say this in a non-graphic way? From restoring density equilibrium, and I mean by that you have more density in your body than is outside, and the way that physics works is atoms like reaching an equilibrium, so your body would sort of spread out. So we had to wear a spacesuit in order to keep that from happening. So could blood feasibly keep your body from, or could blood feasibly keep your suit from decompressing? Yes, I would like to say yes. Granted, I do not have all of the science on this, but I will say blood is designed to clot things. There's these little particles called platelets that exist in your blood that when you get a cut in your body, that is sort of like your body system being compromised, and so the platelets will come in and fill in the holes in your skin. So yes, feasibly, the blood could do a decent job of sealing your suit. I'm sorry, NASA, if I offended you, and that is not correct, but as far as I see it, it would be reasonable, and I would test it, except for obvious reasons I don't want any bloodshed on the show. So a little bit later, Matt Damon is stuck there still. He realizes that he doesn't have enough MREs to last him long enough. Those are meals ready to eat. He doesn't have enough food to last him for a while. Then he happens to discover a secret stash of Thanksgiving potatoes for them to enjoy, and he can plant those potatoes. He happens to be a botanist, so he's trying to find a different way to grow food on Mars. My light was falling over. He's trying to find a different way to grow food on Mars, and so he uses dirt and human waste to get the kind of nutrients that he needs into the soil. The question is if that is reasonable. The thing that plants need most when growing is a source of soil to hold moisture and also a source of nitrogen-rich dirt. Okay, the dirt also can't be too hard the dirt can't be too hard for the roots to come through, or else they can't collect enough water, and the dirt has to be permeable enough for the water to go in and stay in. So there's a couple reasons why this is hard. First off, we'll start with the permeability of the dirt. Matt Damon goes ahead and lays just a little bit of dirt and then puts a layer of plastic. So one way or another, the water wouldn't be able to go too far down. So hopefully that should allow the plant to get all the water that it needs. Secondly, what was my second point? Secondly, the dirt would have to be like thin enough that it wouldn't keep the roots from growing through. And from what we've seen about Mars dirt, it's pretty compact. It's pretty compact, but that does not mean that it couldn't be crushed down so that it was soft enough. And so I'm gonna go ahead and give it a pass there, mostly because I really like the movie and I think it deserves a chance. But lastly is the question of if the dirt has enough nitrogen. And no, the dirt does not have enough nitrogen, but human waste is kind of full of nitrogen, and that's why we use fertilizers from things like cow manure, because they're very, very rich in nitrogen, which is very good for plant growth. So yes, it is actually feasible. Again, there's so many different things to test if that would work, but from those 3 key points, I'm gonna go ahead and say that yes, it is totally feasible. It is partially feasible, I'll say that. Next, Matt Damon generates water for the food to grow by taking leftover fuel. He burns it so he gets just hydrogen. It used to be a hydrogen-nitrogen mix, and then he burns the hydrogen so that it goes into the air and mixes with the oxygen, and then it condenses into water. And that's not even a question. That is totally possible. Hydrogen and oxygen combine that way all the time. And we even have, I forget what the name of the machine is, but it uses electrolysis to take like 2 parts hydrogen and 1 part H2O. Yeah, 2 parts hydrogen and 1 part oxygen. It gives it a spark and it turns into water, and then it gives it another spark and it pulls back into its oxygen and hydrogen gaseous form. So yes, that is totally reasonable. That's how water is made. So at one point, the pressure in the system that he's living in a pressurized system that allows the people to live outside of their suit, so that it's closer to 14.7 pounds per square inch of atmospheric pressure, allowing people to take out their suits and feel like it's Earth and not have their bodies seek density equilibrium. Okay, so at one point that is compromised and a hole is ripped in the side, and he puts a piece of plastic tarp over the side to keep the system pressurized. Now, that is feasible. Tarp is pretty strong, and it keeps the air in. It can do that, and it can handle a decent amount of pressure, definitely 14.7 psi. That's a totally reasonable amount of pressure for it to try and withstand. However, the problem is at one point there is another storm and it blows a lot of wind, which means a lot of dirt, pebbles, and rocks are flying around. They've been kicked up into the air, and whether or not that is feasible, that it could keep from being destroyed, that's a bigger problem. So let's go ahead and start with the fact that most tarp is going to be made out of PVC, which is a very strong plastic. In fact, it has one of the strongest tensile strengths of PVC, even higher than ABS plastic, which is what we use to make a lot of phone cases and most of our 3D prints and things like that. PVC is very, very, very strong, and it can support a lot of weight. I wouldn't be worried about it supporting wind. What I would be worried about is something that's, even with a high tensile strength, that's, you know, fractions of an inch thick, standing up to a flying rock coming in at even like a 20-mile-per-hour wind, could easily rip through a piece of plastic. And to be fair, there is a scene in the movie where Matt Damon keeps cringing every time he hears a loud burst of wind and things blasting up against the side of his tarp. So it is possible that the pressure would remain. However, it was a stroke of luck that the pressure was not compromised. That would be rather unfortunate, and honestly probably more than likely to happen if and only if the wind was blowing towards the tarp. If it was blowing away from the tarp, it's not going to have anything being pushed towards it, how it would rip through. So let's go ahead and say that in a stroke of luck it would probably be okay. The wind probably wouldn't be blowing the right direction, and it would probably be fine anyway. So we'll move on to the next point. So at one point, again, there are spoilers, so if you haven't seen the movie, go see it. But at one point, they try and take an old spaceship that was heading back from Mars to Earth, and they use that to try and go back to get Matt Damon on Mars. And so what they do is, instead of docking at Earth, they use the Earth's gravity to rope around and get slingshot outwards back towards Mars. And is that feasible? I mean, if you follow space and aeronautics at all, yes, that is absolutely possible. We do that all the time with satellites, like with the satellite that just went by Pluto. We had it loop around, I think it was around Jupiter a couple of times before we launched it off to Pluto, because by coming in, it's using the Earth's gravitational pull to gain more speed, and then at the right angle it can leave with little to no velocity wasted, and it can maintain that velocity as it heads off to Pluto. So yes, that's totally reasonable. They only did one round around Earth, but they were already going pretty fast, at least fast enough to make it all the way home to Earth so they could feasibly make it back to Mars. So yeah, let's go ahead and say that that was possible, and we'll move on to the next point. This is looking really good for this movie. Seriously, I think they may have done their homework on this one. Alright. Right, that probably wouldn't be good. Alright, so the last scene is Matt Damon is about to be rescued by the people. They aren't close enough to him. They've gone out on a spacewalk basically, and his captain is tethered in trying to grab him off of the capsule he got launched off of from Mars. So like, he's on Mars, they're coming by in a spaceship, he gets launched off of Mars in a capsule that had already been left there. He jumps off of it, basically, I'll get to that in a second, and she tries to catch him while she's on a spacewalk tethered to their ship, and they're trying to grab each other before they pass by, and he ends up not being close enough to her, so he pokes a hole in his suit, and the air pressure from his suit seeks to maintain a density equilibrium, and it shoots outwards. So it's trying to spread the particles from inside his suit outwards, so it's like a jet, and he tries to fly like Iron Man to join the rest of his group. Yes, that is feasible. However, the movie stated earlier that it would take about 60 seconds for one of their pressurized suits to lose all pressure. They weren't the same suits, but let's go ahead and operate off that paradigm. He'd have 60 seconds to get back into the ship before everything went wrong. And honestly, he probably wouldn't have had that time. And then two, there's probably not enough air in his system. There's not a much surface area on a person anyways. I mean, you think about how far like a fire extinguisher would push you. If you poked a hole and just used the little bit of air surrounding your body, you might have like an inch worth of air all over the 2 square meters of surface area. So you'd have something like 2 square meters by 1 inch thick of normal air pressure. That's not enough air to push you very far. So as much as I like the movie, that probably would not have worked, or at least not for long, because if it worked and it escaped very quickly, it probably, sorry, I'm filming at my apartments here, and it's not like a studio, people do walk by. It probably wouldn't have worked. Unfortunately, there wouldn't have been enough air to push him for that long. At least I don't think so. I could go more into the math, but like I said, I did this like an hour and a half after I saw the movie, if even, and I don't know, I'm just doing this off of what I saw. Probably not possible. But let's say it is, because I love the movie. Seriously, it was a great movie. One of the things that I love most about the movie is that it was very patriotic. At one point, they told the leader, and I say patriotic not just to America, but just all those feel-good, like, pro-humankind kind of things. It was patriotic in the sense that they're trying to rescue the people, and at one point, the leader of NASA wanted to say, no, I don't want to risk the other 6 lives of the living astronauts to save the one, and he was called a coward by one of the people who worked for him. And I love that because on one hand, yes, it is a practicality to save the people who are already alive, but at the same time, those people would have easily been willing to risk their lives for their own friend that they left behind, and I think that's a great message to send in the movie. And another thing that happened is they didn't have a pod that they could use, the Americans, NASA, didn't have a pod that they could use to go up and rescue him, so they ended up having to get one from China, and China, they didn't know that they could get it from China. China knew that they had it. It was a secret file that they were working on for some sort of a secret Chinese mission, and they ended up abandoning it, giving away their secret so that they could rescue the American astronaut. And you know, there's a lot of animosity between Chinese, Japanese, and American engineers. There's so much competition there, and we're kind of like the world powers economically and definitely in engineering. So it's good to see that even though we're competing, at least, you know, Hollywood wants to represent that that's a positive relationship. I'm sorry for the wind. Hopefully that'll cut down here. Yeah, it was a great movie. I love that they include the patriotism, that they included the international cooperation, and I also love that they included Matt Damon's general battle to stay alive. It was a very enriching movie, and all the things that he went through and still maintained the desire to live and to fight for not only his own life, but for the future of NASA missions and for science and furthering that. It was nostalgic and wonderful, and I hope you all go watch it because it was fantastic. Thank you very much for watching today's episode of The Drawing Board. I know it was an impromptu episode, but I hope you liked it. We will be coming back on Thursday. Still, this is just another episode I'm throwing in. We'll be coming back on Thursday with our normal episode about why people are scared. After that, we're going to talk about lycanthropes, so werewolves and vampires and zombies and things like that. And then after that, we'll have a few more surprises for you. We're going to stay with this October theme. In fact, I got the idea today. This is still out by the lake by my house, but I decided that for the October theme, I'm going to go ahead and film outside with the lighting like this. I might even get the light a little bit closer to me, and let me see if I can show you what it would look like. And light it a little bit more like this, so it's a little bit more of a October-y, Spooktober thing. So anyways, thank you so much for watching today's episode of The Drawing Board. If you like what you saw, go ahead and like and share this video with a friend or a family member. If you want to see more, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. If you have any ideas for movies you want us to review, for things you would like us to build, or topics you would like us to discuss. In fact, that's the werewolves, lycanthropes, and zombies episode we're doing. That is a fan request, so I'd be happy to do them. Let me know. I have a lot of good ideas I'm going to do for myself from my own head and for you guys, but if you have ideas, please let me know and I'd be happy to do them. Until then, I'll see you next week with our next episode, still continuing on our normal Thursday, and thank you so much for watching. Go and see The Martian. It was fantastic. Go see it.